They called it coincidence. They called you paranoid. They laughed when you trusted that quiet voice inside your mind. But now, the truth is crawling into the light, and the same people who doubted you are literally shaking. Funny, isn't it? Reality has a cruel sense of humor. It always exposes those who mistake confidence for wisdom. Your intuition wasn't guessing. It was seeing what blind eyes refused to notice. Today, you're not here for comfort. You're here for undeniable proof that your inner voice has been fighting for you all along. Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover will change the way you trust yourself forever. Have you ever experienced a moment when something inside you whispered that a situation was wrong, even though nothing on the surface seemed unusual? You couldn't explain it with facts. You couldn't present evidence. You couldn't convince anyone else because you barely understood it yourself. Yet deep within, there was a quiet certainty that refused to disappear. Most people spend their lives ignoring that voice because the world teaches them to trust what they can see more than what they can sense. Logic is celebrated, external opinions are rewarded, but intuition lives beneath all of that noise, waiting patiently for the moment when reality catches up to what it has already recognized. The remarkable thing about intuition is that it rarely screams. It doesn't demand attention or create dramatic scenes. Instead, it speaks in subtle cuts. A rare few protect their energy, sharpen their focus. Feelings, tiny moments of discomfort, unexpected calm, or an unshakable sense that something doesn't belong where it appears to fit. While your conscious mind searches for proof, your deeper awareness is collecting countless details that your eyes barely notice. A slight change in someone's tone, a repeated pattern of behavior, an energy that suddenly feels different, or a coincidence that happens too often to be dismissed. Your mind may overlook these signals individually, but your intuition quietly connects them into a picture long before you consciously understand what you're seeing. This is why so many people look back on painful experiences and say, "I knew it all along." They didn't discover the truth at the end. They simply remembered what their intuition had been trying to communicate from the very beginning. The signs were always there, but doubt kept them silent. Fear convinced them they were overthinking. Other people's opinions persuaded them to ignore what felt obvious. A rare few protect their energy, sharpen their focus, and build a force within that cannot be bought, stolen, or controlled. Inside, they questioned themselves because everyone around them seemed confident that everything was fine. Slowly, they learned to distrust their own perception instead of questioning the illusion presented before them. There is tremendous power in recognizing that your intuition was never your enemy. It wasn't trying to confuse you or make your life harder. It was trying to protect you from wasting time, energy, trust, and emotional peace. Even when the message was uncomfortable, it served a seer purpose. Growth often begins with discomfort because truth rarely arrives wrapped in convenience. Sometimes intuition asks you to walk away from opportunities that appear perfect. Sometimes it tells you to wait when everyone else is rushing forward. Sometimes it encourages you to speak when silence feels safer. Its guidance doesn't always make sense in the moment, but time has an extraordinary habit of revealing why those inner nudges mattered. The challenge is that intuition and fear can sound similar if you have never learned to tell them apart. Fear is loud, repetitive, and desperate. It imagines endless disasters and demands immediate action. Intuition on the other hand, is calm even when it delivers difficult messages. It doesn't panic, it simply knows. That quiet certainty often feels almost impossible to explain because it isn't built on dramatic emotions, it is built on deep awareness. The more you learn to notice that difference, the easier it becomes to recognize which voice deserves your attention. Many people spend years seeking validation from others before trusting themselves. They wait for someone else to confirm what they already feel inside. They collect opinions, ask for advice, and search endlessly for reassurance, believing confidence comes from external agreement. But true confidence begins when you realize your own inner wisdom deserves respect. This doesn't mean rejecting reason or ignoring evidence. It means understanding that intuition and logic can work together instead of competing. Intuition points you toward the truth, while logic helps you understand it. Together, they become an extraordinary guide through uncertainty. Think about every major turning point in your life. Chances are there was a feeling that arrived before the facts, before the conversation happened, before the betrayal was exposed, before the opportunity appeared. or before the unexpected change transformed everything. Something inside you already sensed that life was moving. At the time, you may have dismissed it as imagination. Looking back, you realize it was preparation. Your intuition was gently aligning you with reality before reality became visible to everyone else. The world often celebrates certainty that comes with evidence, but there is another kind of certainty that arrives quietly, without applause or recognition. It exists in those moments when your heart becomes still despite external confusion. It appears when you suddenly know that a chapter is ending even though the pages haven't turned yet. It reminds you that wisdom is not always loud, and truth does not always announce its arrival. Sometimes the deepest understanding begins as nothing more than a whisper that refuses to disappear, patiently waiting for the day when everything finally makes sense. The greatest truths rarely arrive with flashing lights or dramatic announcements. More often, they reveal themselves through small details that most people overlook. While everyone else focuses on what is obvious, your intuition notices what doesn't quite fit. It catches the hesitation behind confident words, the inconsistency hidden beneath polished appearances, and the strange feeling that something is missing even when everything seems perfect. These are the signs that many dismiss as meaningless, yet they often become the very clues that later explain everything. People tend to trust what they can easily measure. They believe facts are only facts when they are visible to everyone. But your mind is constantly absorbing information beyond your conscious awareness. Every facial expression, every shift in body language, every unusual silence, every repeated behavior, and every subtle change in someone's energy becomes part of an invisible puzzle. You may not consciously remember each individual piece, but your intuition quietly assembles them into a complete picture. By the time your logical mind begins asking questions, your deeper awareness has already reached a conclusion. This is why you sometimes feel uncomfortable around someone who has done nothing obviously wrong. You cannot point to a specific action or explain your hesitation with perfect logic, yet something inside refuses to relax. People often criticize these feelings because they demand evidence before believing them. They tell you that you're imagining things, overreacting, or judging too quickly. In an effort to appear reasonable, you ignore your instincts and convince yourself that everything is fine. Then, weeks or months later, the truth surfaces, and you realize that your discomfort wasn't irrational. It was information waiting for confirmation. Patterns are among the most powerful signs intuition recognizes. One unusual event may be a coincidence. Two similar events may still seem harmless. But when the same behavior repeats itself over and over, your intuition begins connecting those moments into a meaningful pattern. Unfortunately, many people dismiss repetition because each individual incident appears too small to matter. They explain away every warning separately instead of looking at the larger picture. Intuition does the opposite. It is nans that repeated small signals often reveal a much bigger truth than one dramatic event ever could. Another sign people frequently ignore is the feeling of emotional exhaustion around certain situations or individuals. You may enter a conversation feeling calm and leave feeling strangely drained without understanding why. Your conscious mind searches for logical explanations, but your intuition recognizes an energetic imbalance before your thoughts can describe it. This doesn't mean every uncomfortable interaction is dangerous, but consistent emotional depletion is often your inner awareness telling you to pay closer attention. Energy is information, and your intuition understands its language far better than your analytical mind. Timing also plays an important role in how intuition also communicates. There are moments when everything seems to fall apart at once. Plans suddenly change, unexpected delays appear, opportunities disappear, or people unexpectedly leave your life. At first, these interruptions feel frustrating, even unfair. Yet many people later discover that those delays protected them from greater disappointment or redirected them towards something far better. Intuition often works through timing rather than explanation. It guides you away from paths that look attractive today but would eventually lead to regret. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing intuition must always be dramatic to be real. In reality, its messages are usually gentle, a quiet hesitation before making a decision, a feeling that encourages patience instead of urgency, a calm certainty that something isn't meant for you despite its obvious appeal. These moments are easy to dismiss because they lack excitement. Society encourages constant action, immediate answers, and forced, quick decisions. Intuition often asks for the opposite. It invites stillness, observation, and trust in what cannot yet be fully explained. Ironically, the people who ignored your concerns may later act as though the truth appeared out of nowhere. They will be shocked when hidden motives are exposed, relationships collapse, promises are broken, or carefully maintained appearances finally crack. For them, the revelation seems sudden. For you, it feels familiar. You recognize it because your reader prequacious tos qualido extangi, halofain beat teal dela leo ferois, hakali or statius, neothain abalios. Yotis more tracious to conceivably. Intuition introduced you to that truth long before reality made it impossible to deny. You are not surprised because you have been quietly collecting the signs all along. Learning to recognize these subtle messages transforms the way you move through life. Instead of chasing certainty from the outside, you begin paying closer attention to what is happening within. You stop dismissing every unusual feeling simply because it lacks immediate proof. You become more observant, more patient, and more messy, aware of the quiet intelligence operating beneath conscious thought. Over time, you realize that intuition is not predicting the future through magic. It is noticing the present with extraordinary clarity, seeing connections long before they become obvious enough for everyone else to recognize. One of the hardest experiences you can face is knowing something deep inside while everyone around you insists that you're wrong. You begin with quiet confidence, sensing that something isn't right, but for scala passion. As more voices question your perception, doubt slowly begins to replace certainty. People don't always reject your intuition because they want to hurt you. Many reject it because your awareness challenges the version of reality they have chosen to believe. It is often easier for them to dismiss your instincts than to question their own comfort. The world rewards visible proof. It celebrates results that can be measured, explained, and repeated. Intuition doesn't fit neatly into that system because it often arrives before the evidence exists. When you say you simply have a feeling, people assume you are emotional, irrational, or imagining things. They ask for facts that haven't revealed themselves yet. They demand explanations for insights that your conscious mind cannot fully describe. This creates an uncomfortable position where you know something is true but lack the language to convince anyone else. There is also another reason people doubt your inner knowing. Accepting your bays, while I chasing your bays, for niños gebatintis munisqueva, for your focus mole folk. Intuition would force them to confront truths they are not emotionally prepared to face. Imagine someone realizing that a trusted relationship is built on dishonesty, a career path is leading nowhere meaningful, or a familiar routine is quietly destroying their peace. These realizations require change, and change often feels more frightening than denial. So instead of examining the uncomfortable possibility, they reject the messenger. Your intuition becomes the problem because it threatens the problem, 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 because it threatens the problem. Illusion that everything is perfectly fine. Many individuals become uncomfortable around people who notice what others overlook. Awareness has a way of exposing contradictions. Someone who depends on appearances may feel uneasy around a person who naturally senses authenticity. Without saying a single word, your perception becomes a mirror reflecting things they would rather ignore. This is why highly intuitive people are sometimes labeled as difficult overly sensitive or negative. Those maxnobe, those porridge econocompristy is not about turning disadalis, akanation dis or for this enthusiasm, not this two preachers disobey, may do you other ne anari listes. Anai aning in the other set people to see in please the session of the poor nig, it is indicant kills they all in attack you. Labels are often attempts to protect existing beliefs rather than honest evaluations of your character. Another powerful reason people dismiss intuition is because they confuse confidence with certainty. They believe that if something cannot be proven immediately, it has no value. Yet history repeatedly shows that important discoveries often begin as quiet observations before becoming accepted facts. Every meaningful breakthrough starts with someone noticing what everyone else overlooked. Intuition operates in a similar way. It detects patterns before they become obvious. While others wait for undeniable evidence, your deeper awareness is already processing information beneath the surface. Social pressure also plays a significant role. Human beings naturally seek belonging, and questioning the majority requires courage. If everyone around you insists that your instincts are wrong, the temptation to silence yourself becomes incredibly strong. You begin wondering whether you are isolo and overthinking. You apologize for your concerns before fully expressing them. Eventually, you may stop listening to yourself altogether because acceptance feels safer than standing alone. Unfortunately, abandoning your intuition to gain approval often leads to regret. The approval is temporary, but the consequences of ignoring yourself can last much longer. There are moments when your intuition quietly encourages you to leave situations that others admire. People may praise an opportunities for to what or commandise. To celebrate a relationship or encourage a decision that feels deeply wrong to you. From the outside, everything appears successful. Inside, something refuses to settle. Others see the appearance. You sense the foundation. This difference often creates misunderstanding because people judge what is visible, while intuition responds to what is hidden. They believe you are walking away from something valuable. You know you are walking away from something that only appears valuable. Ironically, the same people who once questioned your instincts often change their perspective after reality unfolds. When hidden motives are exposed, promises are broken, or carefully maintained images begin to collapse, they suddenly recognize the truth you sensed from the beginning. They may even say they never expected any of it, forgetting that you quietly expressed concern long before the evidence appeared. By then, you no longer need their validation. The unfolding truth becomes all the confirmation you cannot be bought within that canny stoli folder. Situate conturation de stia cultuestation you are. All thew and all polite the cantamite rildi. 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 All thew and all polite the cantamite ever required. This journey teaches an important lesson about self-trust. Confidence does not come from always being right. It comes from respecting your own perception enough to explore it instead of immediately dismissing it. Intuition is not an excuse to ignore reason or reject facts. It is an invitation to investigate more deeply, to observe more carefully, and to remain open to possibilities that others overlook. When intuition and thoughtful reflection work together, they create a powerful form of wisdom that is both grounded and insightful. As you continue growing, you begin caring less about convincing everyone else that your instincts are valid. You realize that your responsibility is not to win every argument or predict every outcome. Your responsibility is to remain honest with yourself, to notice what your inner awareness is communicating, and to act with integrity even when your choices are misunderstood. The greatest reward is not hearing others admit you were right, The greatest reward is knowing that you no longer betray your own inner voice simply because someone else failed to understand it. There comes a moment in every meaningful story when the truth can no longer remain hidden. Choosing discipline becomes an act of rebellion. It may have been buried beneath excuses, disguised by convincing words, or protected by appearances that seemed impossible to question. For a while, illusion can look stronger than reality. Deception can appear successful. False confidence can silence honest voices. But no matter riled, stolen strive, gorkens kus, feisogis chiokut saranena strive buelias. Midive bui pleishent trisagus, strivens templais quas, mia varmanaus tampes tuizi, plais guanaderens tods, seisti, and striving gisnois. Fielos they stage, stomprigois builds grantes, say stage, one even dison page son sibs, fielos te coringai, vielos pudes, meals arrays, pugil, tiod side bows trends, ident tal dus quaves, build, meals builds, kiod sides, builds trees, forest pudes. How carefully a lie is constructed or how deeply the truth is buried, time has a remarkable way of exposing what was always there. The masks begin to crack, the patterns become impossible to ignore, and what once seemed invisible suddenly becomes obvious to everyone. If you've ever trusted your intuition while others dismissed it, this moment feels strangely familiar. You are not shocked by what is happening, because you have already lived with the feeling long before the evidence appeared. Others may react with disbelief, asking how they never noticed the warning signs. They may act as though the revelation arrived without warning, but you know differently. The clues were always present. The truth was quietly revealing itself through small inconsistencies, repeated behaviors, and subtle moments that most people overlooked. Your intuition simply recognized those fragments before they formed a complete picture. Reality has an interesting way of testing patience. We often want immediate confirmation that our instincts are correct. We want the proof to arrive quickly so we can stop questioning ourselves. Yet truth rarely follows our preferred timeline. Sometimes weeks pass before hidden intentions become visible. Sometimes months or even years unfold before circumstances expose what was concealed. During that waiting period, doubt becomes your greatest challenge. You wonder whether your instincts misled you. You question whether you imagined everything. Meanwhile, the truth continues moving quietly beneath the surface, preparing for the moment it can no longer remain hidden. Many people mistake delay for absence. They assume that because something hasn't been revealed yet, it never will be. But delayed truth is not the same as non-existent truth. Consider how a seed remains invisible beneath the soil before breaking through the surface. For a long time, nothing appears to be happening. Yet beneath the ground, transformation is already taking place. In much the same way, reality often works behind the scenes long before visible proof appears. Your intuition senses those unseen movements, while others judge only what their eyes can observe. One of the most powerful experiences is realizing that your inner voice wasn't asking you to predict the future. It was helping you understand the present more clearly. While everyone else focused on appearances, your deeper awareness noticed the foundation underneath. It wasn't performing magic or seeing impossible visions, and it was simply paying attention to details that others ignored. This realization changes everything because it shifts your relationship with intuition. Instead of viewing it as something mysterious or unreliable, you begin seeing it as a form of quiet intelligence that processes reality on a deeper level. The exposure of truth often creates mixed emotions. There may be relief because you finally have confirmation. There may be sadness because the reality you sensed turns out to be painful. There may even be frustration because people who once dismissed your concerns suddenly acknowledge what you tried to express all along. Yet this is also the moment when wisdom begins replacing self-doubt. You stop asking whether your intuition can be trusted and start asking how you can honor it more consistently in the future. It is important to understand that the purpose of truth is not revenge. Many people become so focused on proving others wrong that they miss the deeper lesson. When reality confirms your intuition, the greatest victory is not watching someone else's illusion collapse. The true victory is realizing that you no longer need external validation to believe in your own perception. You become less interested in saying, "I told you so," and more committed to saying, "I will never ignore myself again." That shift transforms your confidence from something dependent on circumstances into something rooted within. As truth reveals itself, it also removes unnecessary confusion. Decisions that once felt impossible become surprisingly clear. Relationships that drained your energy finally make sense. Opportunities you lost no longer feel like failures because you recognize they protected you from paths that were never aligned with your growth. Even painful endings begin to reveal hidden purpose. What once looked like rejection starts looking like redirection. What once felt like loss becomes the space where something healthier can enter your life. There is an unmistakable peace that arrives when illusion falls away. You no longer waste energy trying to force situations to match your expectations. You stop chasing explanations from people who never intended to be honest. You release the exhausting need to make everyone understand your perspective. Reality has already spoken louder than any argument ever could. The truth now stands on its own, requiring no defense, no justification, and no permission to exist. From that point forward, every confirmed intuition becomes more than just proof that you were right. It becomes a reminder that your inner awareness deserves respect. It teaches you that patience often reveals what urgency cannot, that appearances eventually surrender to reality, and that truth, no matter how delayed, always carries a quiet strength that nothing false can imitate. Once you realize that your intuition has been quietly guiding you all along, the next step is learning how to transform it into one of your Pulkin's formation greatest strengths. Intuition is not a gift reserved for a select few. It is an ability that grows stronger every time you choose to listen instead of dismissing it. Like a muscle that becomes more powerful through consistent use, your inner guidance develops through trust, awareness, and experience. The more you honor it, the clearer its voice becomes. The more you ignore it, the easier it is for the noise of the outside world to drown it out. One of the first changes you notice is that you stop rushing every decision. Modern life constantly pressures people to react immediately, respond now, decide today, move faster than everyone else. But intuition rarely thrives in chaos. It reveals itself most clearly in moments of stillness. When you slow down long enough to observe instead of react, you begin noticing details that previously escaped your attention. You hear the difference between excitement and desperation. You recognize the difference between genuine opportunity and cleverity. Distraction, patience becomes more than a virtue, it becomes a source of clarity. Developing intuition also requires learning to trust your own observations before seeking everyone else's opinions. This does not mean rejecting advice or pretending you know everything. Wisdom often comes from listening to experienced voices. However, there is an important difference between gathering insight and surrendering your judgment. Too many people ask 10 different individuals what they should do before asking themselves what they already know. They search for permission instead of guidance. They hope someone else will remove the responsibility of making difficult choices. But true confidence grows when you realize that outside advice should support your inner wisdom, not replace it. Another powerful habit is paying attention to patterns instead of isolated moments. Anyone can make a mistake. One disappointing conversation does not define a relationship. One setback does not determine your future. Intuition becomes stronger when you learn to observe consistency over time. Does someone repeatedly break promises? Do you consistently feel drained after certain interactions? Does a particular opportunity continue creating unnecessary resistance despite your best efforts? Patterns reveal far more than isolated incidents because they expose the underlying reality beneath temporary appearances. Your environment also shapes the strength of your intuition. Constant negativity, endless Distractions and overwhelming noise make it difficult to hear your inner voice. Every moment spent consuming fear, comparison, or unnecessary conflict creates more interference between you and your deeper awareness. This is why moments of silence are so valuable. Whether it is a quiet walk, a few minutes of reflection, or simply disconnecting from constant stimulation, giving your mind space allows intuition to rise above the mental clutter. Clarity often appears when you stop forcing answers. A rare fubus will appears, 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 and create room for them to emerge naturally. There will still be moments when intuition asks you to make uncomfortable choices. It may encourage you to walk away from people who no longer respect your peace. It may tell you to decline opportunities that look impressive but feel empty. It may guide you toward unfamiliar paths while everyone else questions your direction. These moments require courage because intuition often leads before visible results appear. You may not have immediate proof that your decision is correct. All you have is an inner certainty that refuses to disappear. Choosing to honor that feeling strengthens your trust in yourself with every step you take. It is equally important to understand that intuition grows alongside humility. Trusting your instincts does not mean believing you are always right. Sometimes your emotions, fears, or personal desires can influence how you interpret situations. This is why reflection matters. Instead of acting impulsively, you are controlled at your impulse and about mace. I build a fira, nembuaka wadothagal badi pralda, impulse and about mace. A goal, chindekia waresnok. Learn to ask honest questions. Is this feeling calm or driven by panic? Am I responding to present reality or past wounds? Is my intuition pointing toward peace or simply away from discomfort? These questions help separate genuine inner guidance from temporary emotional reactions. As your intuition becomes stronger, you begin noticing another remarkable change. You waste less energy trying to convince people who refuse to understand you. In the past, you may have spent countless hours explaining your decisions, defending your boundaries, or proving that your concerns were valid. Now, you recognize that not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Some people will only believe what they can see after it has already happened. That is their path, not yours. Your responsibility is not to gain universal approval. It is to remain faithful to the quiet wisdom guiding your own life. The greatest strength intuition offers is not the ability to predict every outcome. Life will always contain uncertainty, surprises, and unexpected challenges. The true strength lies in knowing that no matter what happens, you have developed a trustworthy relationship with yourself. You stop living from constant fear of making the wrong choice because you know you will recognize when something feels aligned and when it does not. That confidence creates resilience. As the circumstances change, you trust your ability to adapt because your guidance comes from within rather than depending entirely on external conditions. Over time, you realize that intuition is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming deeply connected to your own awareness. Every experience, every lesson, every confirmed instinct strengthens that connection. You no longer chase certainty in every direction because you understand that the most reliable compass has been with you all along. Instead of doubting the quiet voice inside, you begin walking beside it, allowing it to shape your decisions, protect your peace, and guide you toward a life built on authenticity rather than fear. There are moments in life when everything suddenly clicks into place. The confusion that once clouded your mind begins to disappear. Scattered pieces of your past connect with perfect clarity, and the truth you've quietly carried inside finally stands before you in undeniable form. This is the moment that changes everything, not because the world has transformed overnight, but because your relationship with yourself has. The proof you've been waiting for is no longer something you need to search for. It is something you recognize because your intuition prepared you to see it long before anyone else could. Think back to every time you ignored your inner voice because someone convinced you that logic alone should guide every decision. You silenced your instincts to avoid being judged. You questioned your own perception because others seemed more confident. You waited for evidence that never came until reality eventually forced the truth into the open. Looking back, you realize that your intuition was not competing with logic. It was simply seeing a bigger picture than your conscious mind could fully understand at the time. That realization becomes one of the most powerful lessons you will ever learn because it changes how you approach every future decision. The unbelievable proof is not always dramatic. Sometimes it appears through quiet moments that reveal everything. A person who repeatedly promised loyalty eventually exposes their true intentions. An opportunity that once seemed perfect slowly reveals hidden costs. A path you desperately wanted suddenly closes, only for a far better one to appear later. At first, these events may feel unrelated, but when you step back and examine the entire journey, a remarkable pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Every moment your intuition spoke, reality eventually caught up. Every warning that felt uncertain gained meaning with time. Every quiet feeling that refused to disappear eventually found its explanation. This understanding creates a deep sense of freedom. You stop treating yourself as someone who constantly needs permission to trust your own awareness. Instead of asking whether your intuition deserves a place in your decision-making, you begin accepting it as one of your greatest allies. You still think carefully, you still gather facts, you still consider different perspectives. A rare few protect their energy, sharpen their focus, and build a force within that cannot be bought, stolen, or controlled. But you no longer ignore the quiet wisdom. Impulse into prairie highs cannot immediately be explained. You allow both reason and intuition to work together, creating decisions that are both thoughtful and deeply aligned with your authentic self. One of the greatest transformations happens when you stop chasing validation from people who never intended to understand your perspective. For years, you may have believed that proving yourself was necessary before trusting yourself. You hoped others would eventually admit you were right. You imagined that their approval would finally bring peace. Yet when that moment arrives, you discover something unexpected. Their validation matters far less than you imagined, because you have already learned the lesson that truly counts. You now trust your own perception. External agreement becomes a pleasant bonus rather than an emotional necessity. The proof also changes the way you view difficult experiences from your past. Events that once seemed meaningless begin revealing hidden purpose. The relationship that ended painfully taught you to recognize manipulation sooner. The opportunity you lost protected you from a direction that would have limited your growth. The disappointment that once felt unbearable became the very experience that sharpened your awareness. What once looked like failure now appears as preparation. What once felt like punishment now reveals itself as protection. Suddenly, your past no longer feels like a collection of random events. It becomes a connected story, guiding you toward greater wisdom. Another remarkable shift occurs in the way you approach uncertainty. Before, the unknown may have filled you with anxiety because you believed you needed complete certainty before taking action. Now you understand that certainty is rarely available in advance. Alchemida and Vakfers. Instead of demanding guarantees, you develop confidence in your ability to recognize truth as it unfolds. You become less afraid of making mistakes because you know your intuition will continue guiding you and helping you adjust whenever necessary. Confidence is no longer built on controlling every outcome. It is built on trusting your capacity to navigate whatever comes next. As this confidence grows, fear gradually loses its influence. Fear once convinced you that listening to yourself was dangerous. It warned you that trusting your instincts might lead to failure, rejection, or isolation. But experience has shown you something entirely different. The greatest regrets often, forstuides orsta, follows within Ockham becomes an aituaning, came not from trusting your intuition but from ignoring it. Every time you silenced your inner voice to satisfy someone else's expectations, you drifted further from your authentic path. Every time you honored it, even when the decision felt uncomfortable, you moved closer to the life that genuinely belonged to you. The most unbelievable proof is not found in someone admitting they were wrong or in circumstances perfectly matching your expectations. The greatest proof is the person you have become. You are stronger because you stopped doubting every quiet feeling. You are wiser because experience taught you to recognize patterns instead of isolated moments. You are calmer because your peace no longer depends entirely on external opinions. Most importantly, you have built a relationship with yourself that cannot easily be shaken by uncertainty or criticism. From this point forward, Every decision carries a different kind of confidence. You no longer walk through life searching wastigans, kodikras, desperately for someone else to tell you what is true. You understand that while the world will always offer opinions, distractions, and conflicting advice, the quiet voice within has consistently guided you toward clarity. The evidence is no longer hidden in the future. It already exists in every lesson you've survived, every instinct that proved accurate, and every moment you chose to trust yourself despite the noise surrounding you. That is the proof that changes everything, because once you truly believe it, you never have to abandon your own inner wisdom again.